Y'all, thank you so much for joining us. As I mentioned, we are talking about the Will Smith and Chris Rock. I don't even know, should I call it like controversy? What do you even call it?
Entanglement.
As Jared mentioned, the Chris Rock and Will Smith entanglement. I mean, I think that's actually a good way to put it. So I'm Brooke Fitzpatrick. I'm the founder of Mosaic Matchmaking. This is my husband, Jared. I am trying to figure out, oh yeah, you don't have Instagram. Jared doesn't have Instagram because I'm trying to get the video so I can see y'all's comments at the same time as we're recording. But anyway, drop in the comments what you all think about what happened yesterday. I'm very interested to hear everybody's opinion. I put a poll up earlier, I guess last night, and I asked, my followers, do you feel like Will's actions were justified? And 73% said that no, he should have handled it differently. And the rest said that yes, they felt like he was actually defending his wife. So please let us know, if you haven't already responded to the poll, what your thoughts are and what your take is about what happened last night.
So let's just go over the facts, like no opinions yet, just the facts, right? So Chris Rock made a disrespectful joke about Jada Pinkett Smith, and in the joke he referenced G.I. Jane, which was a call out to the fact that she, had her head shaved. Jada Pinkett Smith has shaved her head because of her struggle with alopecia, and but even in that, he was making jokes at a lot of people's expense. And so, although it was very disrespectful, it was not like it was specifically calling her out, separate from everybody else. Unfortunately, Jada Pinkett Smith did not, at least from what you could see on the video, she did not think that joke was funny. And although when I watched it, Will Smith actually did laugh, right after that, I guess he saw Jada Pinkett Smith's face and decided he needed to do something about it. So he went up on stage to confront Chris Rock and didn't say anything, just slapped him, turned his back, went back and sat down, and then he yelled out, keep my wife's name out your mouth. There was some profanity in there too, but I'm not going to repeat that part. He yelled it twice, and then Chris Rock said, "I will," and moved on, right? So those were the facts. I try not to insert any opinions into that yet, because I know we're going to talk about the opinion in just a second. But I've seen a lot of people talking about this on social media, and I was just texting with a couple of my friends, and I talked to one of my friends earlier. And one of the things that I've seen people assuming is that Chris Rock knew about her condition, and I have no idea if this man knew that she had alopecia and that's why she shaved her head, or if he was just, making a joke about it. So I can't assume that there was any malicious intent there. It might have just been like he just really didn't know and made a bad joke. The other thing I will say is, like I mentioned earlier, Will Smith was initially laughing at the joke.
Yeah.
So it was a little odd to me that he would go from laughing at the joke to then being furious and jumping up on stage and feeling the need to hit Chris Rock. So those were like my first two observations. But I'll pause there and see if I missed anything.
Jared was like, oh, we need to go live. And I was like, I don't know what to share. But I thought it was important because as a married couple, and especially Jared, as a husband, I thought it'd be really interesting for him to kind of share his opinion because I think aside from, what Chris Rock did, I think we can all agree that his joke was insensitive. I don't think that's up for debate. But I think the debate really is, was Will Smith's actions justified? For a couple of thoughts there is, it kind of raised questions about what is the role of a husband as a protector, number one, and number two, the other issue and debate that I've been seeing on my timeline is about what does it mean to protect Black women, right? This has been something that has been talked about a lot lately because traditionally, and I can agree, and this has been my experience as well prior to meeting you and even in business, I feel like Black women aren't always protected, respected, and supported by Black men and people in general as much as we should have. Because when you think about Black women's role, we are always the cheerleaders, the supporters, protesting. We're out there at the forefront of change, and I just don't think our energy is met and matched, right? So there's this argument about protecting Black women, and people saying that that's what Will Smith was doing. He was protecting his wife. So I can understand where they're coming from, but I think my issue is that you also have to match the consequences and actions, right? So for me, with Chris Rock, he was on stage, he made this very distasteful joke about Jada. I did not feel like protecting Jada meant that he needed to go up on the stage and really assault Chris Rock for that. Jada was not in immediate danger, she wasn't in harm's way, he wasn't in her face yelling or threatening her. And so I just don't feel like his actions matched what Chris Rock was doing. So I'll throw that there for a second and let you pick it up.
Yeah. So just straight off the bat, I agree. I don't think that Will Smith was justified in the action. With that said, I think that Black men and men in general should stand up and protect their wives or women. The issue was he resorted to violence first. I didn't think that was necessary. And again, there's an opportunity there because he had his time on stage coming up where he could have voiced why that joke was not funny and why it was insensitive, and maybe even done some education about alopecia and the disease and the effect of that, as opposed to resorting to violence first. And one of the comments, or one of the things that I kept seeing coming up was, this is, Will Smith is 52, 53 years old?
Yeah.
So he's this is not I could get it a little bit if he was still Fresh Prince of Bel-Air Will, straight out of Philly. He, is responding based on the actions that he has seen growing up. But this man has been in the public spotlight for decades now and has gone through a lot worse. I mean, not to go into all the marital issues they've had, but he's been through it over the last few years. And so it just felt like a big overreaction for him to slap another man because of a joke that, again, we don't know the context.
And Chris Rock of all people.
But that was the other, so I'm not to go too far off that path, but would he have done that if it was another comedian? I saw that come up several times.
Yeah.
If it was Kevin Hart or Steve Harvey, or it's some of these other comedians.
Or even a white comedian.
I definitely don't think he would have done it if it was a white comedian. Or if it was a female comedian. What made him feel like it was okay to smack Chris Rock? I don't know.
I'm thinking it was more of a personal thing at that point, because I can't see him doing that to another comedian.
Yeah.
Dave Chappelle?
Yeah.
I don't really see him doing that to Dave Chappelle.
Yeah. I mean, Chris Rock had made a joke about Jada Pinkett in, I think, 2016.
So I'm thinking it was he took it very personally.
Yeah, and he did issue an apology. Will Smith did issue an apology later, and I mean, he spoke about it.
Ago.
Yeah, but he also issued a formal apology to Chris Rock. today. And he talked about the fact that violence was not the right choice and that he was sorry, but like the damage is done.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It felt like, to your point about the consequence matching the action, that he just definitely overcompensated. And then, this is not to be funny because now it's a very serious situation and all that stuff. But like, who open palm slaps another man? And Chris Rock is not a big man, so like, if Will Smith wound up and hit him dead in his face, that should have knocked him down, or at least caused him to be distracted. But he came back right. Just pop. And I'm like, so clearly he didn't get hit that hard. He was disoriented for maybe half a second. So I'm like, that doesn't mean to me that you are really that angry. Because if you're really angry, you're not going to just slap him and then walk off.
I think that's why people thought it was a joke at first. Because that was like the immediate first reaction that I think people had. Like, wait, is this a joke? Because it's not like he punched Chris Rock and knocked him out. It was like he got on stage, slapped Chris Rock, and then went back to his seat. And people were like, wait, is this stage? Was this part of the show? So I do think, that in itself kind of raised questions like, is this real life right now?
Yeah. Okay, so just one other thing I wanted to bring up. Well, I think that Will's response came from a good place.
You think it came from a good place?
Meaning he wanted to defend his wife's honor.
So you don't think that was his ego?
I think part of it was, I think the way he reacted was ego. Like he felt like he had to walk up and physically attack someone. But I think the whole concept of defending Jada's honor came from a place of not it's about me, but really I can't let this go. Because, she wasn't going to do anything, so he felt like I will take the hit, or I'll give somebody else the hit, but I will take the potential blowback, just so that she knows I got you. And I would say as a husband, that's something that we always have to weigh.
Yeah, right? I think that's the big part of it, weighing. When is it worth it? What action is justified in this situation?
Yeah, if somebody, put out at a bar or a restaurant or, any social area place, and somebody bumps into you and doesn't apologize, I feel okay, now I have the responsibility to confront them. Say, hey, you bumped into my wife, please apologize to her, or, you spilled something on her, please apologize. I would never jump straight to, I need to physically attack this person for being disrespectful, especially if they didn't recognize.
Right. And in some of those instances, if they didn't recognize, I wouldn't even expect you to probably even say anything. I think as a wife, my viewpoint and stance on the situation is my husband has worked almost all of his entire life to become this movie star. And Jared and I reread Will's book last year. It was fantastic, phenomenal. But his biggest goal was to become a movie star. And he talked about how people are not going to outwork him to reach his goals. And I was so proud because I felt like he deserved to be there. He 110% deserved his award. But, sitting there, I'm kind of as his wife, I would not have wanted him to risk losing even a morsel of his reputation to get on the stage and knock someone out. It was so not worth it. I think there were so many different ways he could have defended her honor, pulling Chris Rock to the side, even, I think you even mentioned worst case scenario, getting up there and interrupting him, but not actually laying hands. I just feel like you also have to think about it from, your husband's, as protecting your husband too. My husband is a black man. We know how America treats black men. He is, I am afraid, I hope I'm hoping the consequences are, I don't even know how I hope the consequences, but I'll say I'm cringing worried about what the Academy may do or the statement they're gonna put out. But even now, Will Smith's reputation is tarnished. And I wouldn't want my husband to risk arrest are, having backlash or having controversy in his career over doing something like that wasn't called for. Because again, although Chris Rock, I think, was wrong in his comments, Jada was not in any type of like immediate danger or harm.
Yeah. And one thing I forgot to mention when I talked about the facts. So Chris Rock did not press charges against Will, but he easily could have.
He could have.
And that would have been even worse for Will. I thought the whole thing was just interesting how like the awards just proceeded forward. Like there was no hey, we're gonna pause and acknowledge what just happened. It's like, they just moved forward. Now I will say the rest of it was like a blur because the only thing that people were talking about was Will slapping Chris. Yeah. Even his own Oscar acceptance speech, which is a huge deal. For him to get his first Oscar was overshadowed. It's like,
and not just him, but all the other accomplishments of everybody else from that night. Like, we read about how this was the first time a black man, was able to produce the Oscar. Samuel L. Jackson got recognition. Questlove won an Oscar. And so these are just not things that people are really focused on. And all the other winners and nominees, their moment it got stolen. Because everything, the headlines and everything people are talking about today is the slap. But it is interesting that they proceeded on. Like, I don't know if the Oscars, the coordinators were like just in shock. I wonder what was going on with them. Like, did this just happen? Do we need to stop? I don't know how they just proceeded like that didn't even happen.
Yeah, it was kind of like the Kanye "I'm gonna let you finish" moment. Yeah. In fact, it was very similar because the whole point of that was he's defending Beyonce, that's not his wife. Yeah. But like, this black woman had the best music video of all time, so I'm gonna interrupt and like take something away from you. Kanye didn't strike anybody, but like, think about that. That's a cultural moment that is still talked about today. Yeah. And like, I don't remember anything else about that award show or any award show since then. So I think people will be talking about this for a long time. Like, this will be one of the things people remember about Will Smith. Like, this is cemented in his legacy.
Yeah, I hate that. And I was thinking about, at the end of the year, everybody's like, the top moments of, 2020, 2021. And I was like, even though this happened in March, people are going to be December 2022, January 2023, thinking about, one of the top moments of the year was Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. And I do remember going back and watching Chris Rock's reaction. It reminded me a lot of how Chris Tucker reacted when when Kanye said that George Bush doesn't care about black people, because he's kind of just at a loss for words. Did this just happen? And I don't know. It's not really funny, but it reminded me of that moment.
Oh yeah, that was one of the things I noticed after Will Smith. So after he sat down, he was yelling and that's when you see the reaction of all the famous people, all the stars, and they're like, what is going on? But one thing I noticed, well, there were two things. One thing I noticed was afterwards, Denzel Washington and Tyler Perry pulled Will Smith to the side and were just talking to him. And my thought was, that's what I would expect for somebody who is that far along in their career, to have that wisdom and the clarity of thought to be like, okay, let me pause, take a moment, and then talk to this person who has gone through something about, just to make sure that they understand, hey, I'm here for you. And I had looked up to Will Smith, even before reading or listening to his audiobook. He was a personal hero of mine. And so I would expect him to be in the position of Denzel, right? Counseling somebody younger, hey man, I know you made a mistake, but it's gonna be okay. And so it was just odd to me to see this man who is so accomplished, essentially having to be mentored about an issue that you would think he would have already addressed earlier in his life. And the second thing, so one of the things that he talks about in his audiobook is that growing up in West Philadelphia, which is not just a line from his Fresh Prince, but like his real life. He was always on edge. Like if somebody attacked him, there was no other choice but to retaliate, immediately.
Yeah.
And so he shares a story where he was in the, I guess one of the producers of the Fresh Prince.
Like maybe the CEO of the network, like the president of the network. Yeah, it was.
Okay, maybe it was.
Yeah.
But they had like called Will into his office, and Will and Benny Medina, who was one of the founders of kind of the original creator of the show with Quincy Jones, were sitting in his office, and there was another guy with Will. JR, thank you, baby.
I remember. I was like, I want to meet JR. He didn't sound really cool.
Anyways, long story short, the executive had taken on kind of a tone and a stance with Will that he felt was disrespectful, and so he and his friend JR, like their immediate reaction was to buck back at him, like stand up and get loud, get in his face. And in the book, he talks about how he had completely misread that situation, and it was only because of his upbringing and his youth. Right at that time, he was in his early 20s, I think, and so he's like, I just didn't have the experience to be able to navigate like what it means when you're in a professional situation versus like being on the street and somebody does that to you. But that was decades ago, right? And so in my mind, I'm like, you already learned this lesson, man. Like if somebody does something to you, you know you don't have to immediately retaliate. Like, and you're Will Smith. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's really a sad situation
crazy.
All around. I just honestly feel like it was him losing control in that moment, but I really don't feel like it was justified. I just feel like he did not match Chris Rock's energy, and I just hate that it was at others' expense, like anybody else who got awarded and who accomplished something new at the Oscars. It's just sad that they were the ones who ended up having to pay. But I guess our takeaways really are, with the role of the husband. Like, what's the takeaway there, Jared, in terms of the role of the husband protecting the wife?
I think, again, just to reiterate, the husband should always protect the wife. Your role as the leader of your family is not just your wife, like your entire family, right? So your kids, even if somebody attacks them. But it's also to self-regulate and to know when to respond and at what volume essentially to respond. And so there was definitely a lower volume that could have been implemented in that situation. But also, although I don't think Will consulted Jada and was like, hey, I'm about to go slap Chris Rock. There's also a part of me that's looking at Jada and saying, like, why did you not grab your husband's hand and be like, hey, sit down? Like, what are you doing? Because I know if something had happened with you, like going back to the example of somebody bumping you in a crowded place, if you see me about to like go reach for the dude, you're gonna be like, whoa, chill. Like,
it's not that serious.
This is not a big deal.
Yeah.
So while, again, I know this might be an unpopular opinion, because I've seen a lot of people out here like, Will was right. I don't think that the way he handled it was the right way to handle it. I agree. I understand the sentiment, but I think that he was out of line for resorting to violence first. And I also wish that there had been some sort of communication. Right? Like, it's not always the first reaction is not always the best reaction. In fact, most of the time it's not. So.
And you have to think about, like, honestly, what do you have to lose? Like, he has a lot to lose. So that's why I was just saying, even as the wife and understanding how my Black husband might be perceived, and he's probably going to lose a lot more than if, say, for instance, a white gentleman reacted the same way. Like, no, I'm not hurt. I'm okay. We can address this offline, off camera. But just as the wife, considering, what position the husband may have to put himself in, and is it worth risking, not Will Smith's livelihood, obviously, but for smaller issues, is it worth risking a livelihood, like you said, if we were at a bar or at a restaurant, you potentially getting arrested or, going to jail.
Yeah.
Having to deal with the police.
Yeah.
Just itself is, a risk and issue.
So, I think we've talked this to death at this point, but we just wanted to come out to everybody's talking about it and just kind of give our perspective. And I just saw, it was funny, as we were talking about it, I just saw that the Academy is doing a formal review of Will Smith's assault on Chris Rock. And so they had already condemned the violence and said this is not okay, but now it's making it more formalized.
Yeah.
Right? So there might actually be some real consequences for him, up to probably maybe taking away his Oscar, which would be awful.
Devastating.
After you spent so long trying to get to that. So,
well, thank y'all. Continue to post the memes. The memes are funny. Let's do that.
Oh yeah, the memes are hilarious. Oh my gosh.
I think we'll be seeing that meme floating around for a while. But anyway, thank you all so much for joining us again. I'm Brooke Fitzpatrick, the founder of Mosaic Matchmaking. This is my husband, Jared. We just want to give you perspective from a married couple, but I hope you'll have a great rest of your day.